think one of the kind of traditional monitoring techniques is that they just, especially in a work anywhere scenario, they don't measure the experience where the user actually is. All of this data is not in your data center anymore. It's from, third-party cloud providers. It's, going through an ISP, a lot of the things that Jason just mentioned, right? And so, it's a bit, you're almost measuring the wrong thing, if you're not looking at the real user experience. And so, traditional monitoring as far as challenges, typically takes place on servers or maybe on a single website, right? And that's a portion of the end user experience, but it's not the entire thing. And so we'll talk in a little bit about how to be a little bit more holistic about the end user experience and really look at all the aspects of the tech experience, because they all impact each other. The real-time component as well tends to be a major gap here too. So a lot of companies will rely exclusively on a testing capability to really look at the end user experience. And testing is super important. We'll talk about that later. But it doesn't allow you to kind of engage the user in real time. There could be other external factors in there that testing isn't taking into account. And so understanding what this actual user experience is like is really important. So the traditional approach there needs a little bit of evolution in addition to make it super effective. It's often overly focused on IT metrics that frankly have limited or no relationship to employee satisfaction and the business outcome that you're trying to drive. If your goal is to improve digital experience, to enable people to be more productive, to enable them to be happier at work so that they stay at your company for a longer period of time, which there is a very strong correlation between all of those things that I just mentioned, then a traditional IT metric or SLA, like an MTTR, isn't going to give you that information. You need to have better metrics around what those business outcomes are and how are you delivering against those metrics. So there's a big rise today around the concept of the XLA, the experience level agreement, too, playing a major role for organizations. Limited view into third-party cloud services, ISPs, et cetera, right? A lot of the monitoring tools are designed for that older world where the enterprise owned a lot more of the technology that they gave to their users. And so in this world of, SaaS and, cloud providers and so forth, and people working from home, that's not necessarily the case anymore. So we need to evolve our approach to be more comprehensive of the fact that we don't own all of these technologies anymore. And often doesn't include qualitative feedback from employees, right? And that's a major gap today. It can bring you into that classic watermelon situation where all your metrics say you're green, but you're not seeing the red in the middle of the watermelon, which is all the negative user feedback. And so that's a major trend in the industry as well. But I would say that it's not just a tool problem as far as traditional monitoring techniques. It's also a process and people challenge about how do you organize around digital experience. And so on the next slide here, I just released a report on best practices for technology experience management. And we identified basically 5 major challenges, which are related to the technical capabilities, but are also related to how do you operationalize experience management in your organization? And so there are 5 things that we identified as major challenges. Prioritization, right? Where do I actually start? How do I know what's wrong? Organization, who does what, who owns what? And I love that slide that you had up just before this, Jason, around all these different owners of digital experience, right? You can get into a situation where it's not clear who owns the digital experience, and all of them play a role in ensuring that experience is a productive one for the end user. And so we're seeing a lot of organizations, do some things to better standardize their organizational approach to experience management. Technical debt, obviously, we will be living with the legacy application debt until, probably the day we die. So it's something that's not going away anytime soon. But the question is, how do you approach it, both in terms of legacy technologies, but also skill sets? Adoption, which a lot of these end user experience management tools can help with, but really driving adoption of new technology services, that's part of the experience too. And then finally, continuous improvement. How do I keep innovating on this experience overall? So I would, as you start looking at your experience management strategy, look at it as a strategy, not necessarily as just a tool, right? It's the tool, which is the underlying, foundational component of it, but it's also how do you operationalize that in your organization? What processes do you change? What people do you put in charge? All of those sorts of things also play an incredibly important role in this as well. So Jason, over to you for the next one.
Sure. So I think, this question really focused or centered around, what are some of the challenges of delivering a great digital experience? And they've only gotten harder, when it comes to, cloud and SaaS and remote work from home. There's so many things that come together for an end user that IT has to deal with, whether it's, networking and security, proxies, single sign-on, cloud access security brokers, just to be able to get to, Salesforce or Office 365 or Concur or one of the other applications that might be delivered to end users, and they needed to be able to get to it wherever they were. All of these things come together, and it's, visibility was lost when either people went to, work from home, or when all the applications shifted to the cloud. Additionally, the benefits of going to the cloud, where everything is continuously upgraded, they can have pros and cons. If anybody's ever looked at like the Office 365 roadmap, it's just riddled with new releases, new changes, new UI stuff. So so that's both a pro and a con. People get upgraded applications, much faster, which was one of the problems when everything was on-prem. It was really difficult to upgrade all the time. And so now Microsoft is doing it for us, and they go fast, and they make lots of changes. They make lots of network changes. They make lots of application changes. They upgrade these things all the time. And IT often isn't aware of whether or not those upgrades cause problems. So it goes with that last bullet point there, employee expectations that things are fresh and new and upgraded all the time. There's pros and cons to that, in that you have to be aware of what's happening. Along with all these upgrades, comes just all the different access methods that are mentioned on this slide and on the next one, which is that, internet connectivity, the endpoints and the hops, remote troubleshooting, all of these factors go into the end user experience when it hits the desktop and how they interact with apps. And so this is really the problem challenge area, whether or not that user was at the headquarters on the local LAN, or remote on a laptop and roaming around, or working from home, how they access these applications, the context for, the performance of everything, and proactively monitoring and understanding whether or not there's good uptime and availability for these applications, especially as they change, is really, one of the things that we hear from customers is really challenging, with delivering a great user experience.